Hi, friend. So good to see you. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are having a fantastic start to the week. I am joining from Austin, Texas. It's so good to see so many of you joining from all over the place. Big hi to Anja and Jeff and Giacomo and Rachel and Nadia. Man, it is so good to see you. If it is your first time here, welcome. Come on in. The water is fine. Join us over in the chat where you can be part of this conversation too, and lending us your tips, your tactics, your strategies, your recommendations, your best practices. If you are listening on your headphones at a later date on your favorite podcast network, hey, I'm so glad you could join us. I'll bet a little tardy. You couldn't join us live, but just know any questions you have, even if it's after the show, happy to answer them the best way that I can. I am really looking forward to this discussion today. Hopefully you are as well, because I feel like we spend a lot of time in January really envisioning what I lovingly refer to as best case scenario, right? New year, new you. You're looking at the best. You're looking at what you want to achieve. You're looking at how to get to your goals. You're looking at how to do your vision board. And you're really kind of taking the time to prepare and welcome in this new glorious life that you have envisioned for yourself in your career, in your personal life, in your friendships. And I enjoy, even though it's a little sadistic, I enjoy that Mike Tyson quote that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think our resolutions or goals or whatever you want to call them for the new year are no different. You will get punched in the face. It's not if, it is when you are going to get punched in the face, my friend. And so I wanted to really dig into, what does that look like? What does resilience look like? What does it look like to hold on to new goals, new habits, new things when all of a sudden you're thrown off course, or your boss says something you didn't expect, or there were layoffs, or you lost your biggest client? What does that look like when we have spent all this time kind of building up this new life? And so as I was kind of meditating on this and thinking about it, I happened to see that our dear friend, Gemma Leigh Roberts, had a new course that literally came out a month ago. So it was sort of the stars aligned. It was like this cosmic answer to my question. And her course is all about building optimism for performance and for well-being. So building that optimism when the bad things happen. And so again, all the stars aligned. I thought it was perfect timing to bring Gemma on with us and really dig into this topic of resilience and envisioning your future life in a way that is great, even when the bad things come. So wherever you are, I hope you will help me welcome Gemma to our coffee chat.
Hello.
So good to see you.
I know. So lovely to see you as well. It feels like it's been ages. A long
It
time.
has
So
been,
pleased
because
to see
you've
you.
had a lot going on, young lady. You've been a very busy bee.
Oh gosh, yeah, there has been a lot going on. Like you said, lots of new courses, podcast launch, Mindset Matters Hub launch. It has been. I mean, 2023 was a full-on year. So let's hope 2024 is a little bit calmer.
Yeah. You have a lot going on. And one of the things I wanted to dig into right off the bat, because I think it just kind of helps level set everybody, is sometimes I think people see somebody like you and you're so successful and you have so much going on that they think, well, it's so easy for her because she has launched a successful podcast and she has a successful newsletter, and kind of everything is coming up roses for Gemma. And she must have, it's all unicorns and rainbows over there. And so I just want to level set, like, you also face bad times. You also get punched in the face. What does that look like for you? Because I'm sure you experienced that in 2023. Just we didn't see it.
All the time. Like, I'm exactly the same as everyone else. There's nothing like magical going on in my life over here at all. I still have to work on my resilience day in, day out. There's loads of days where I don't feel resilient when I wake up or I'm facing really big challenges. I've got 2 small children as well, so trying to work and parent and I'm trying to be great at lots of things. I don't feel like I am most of the time. So yeah, the 2023, there were lots of challenges in 2023. I think two big launches at the same time. So the Mindset Matters Hub and the podcast, which are actually different things. And they kind of align, but we're marketing in them different ways, and they are different things. May not have been, in hindsight, may not have been the the best plan to launch it all at once. I mean, I know where my thinking was, and I know it kind of ties together, but looking back, I'm like, whoa, that was a lot. Didn't all go to plan. Loads of things went wrong. We're still trying to I mean, that was in November. I'm still trying to fix things now in January. So it's kind of getting there. But the thing is, no one knows what the original plan was. So kind of what's been launched looks great, but that actually isn't what the original plan was. So I have to kind of reframe things that feel like they haven't gone so well for me, actually probably have gone well, if that makes sense. It's just not exactly how I was expecting things to be. So yeah, like 2023 was tough. Like so many challenges, my end. And actually, do you know, I was having this conversation today with someone talking about how stressful 2023 was, and like 2024 was so much better. Like the start is a lot more chilled, and I've had a bit more time. I could be a bit more creative. But we were talking about this exact thing, that no one sees it. No one sees what goes on behind the scenes, or what it takes to get something over the line, or, you know, that period of intense working really hard, working really late and trying to parent and being exhausted, and to pick up loads of stuff which isn't my forte. But you do, like, but then it is a bit like, when I think about resilience, it's a period of time. I can't live and work like that forever, but I could do it to kind of get it over the line. But no one sees that bit of it. So thank you for asking. Actually, I'm very happy to share all the things that went wrong.
Well, I'm curious because obviously you have sort of a lot of tips and tactics in your arsenal of kind of how to build that resilience, whether it is going for a walk outside, whether that is practicing gratitude with your morning coffee. I'm curious though, because everyone has sort of a different strokes for different folks. So for you, like, what do you personally use when you are up late working on the Mindset Matters Hub launch, or all of a sudden one of your kids is sick at a really impromptu time?
Yeah, and they are today, actually. They've both been home today. So as usual, whenever I do a live, I don't do many lives. Literally, whenever I do one, my kids are sick and home, like without fail. Or I'm sick. There's either they're sick or I'm sick. What do I do? It kind of depends on the time. And this is the thing about resilience. Resilience isn't really an end goal. It's more like a process. So it's something you have to work on. There are things that you can do to help you be resilient. If your end goal is to be resilient, you're never gonna make it, because there's so much going on that can affect that. It could be what's going on in your life day to day. It could be how many challenges you've got going on at once, how overwhelming things feel, how your health is in general. If you think about like lack of sleep, for example, that can impact how you navigate adversity and your resilience. So there's so many things that can impact your resilience. And I think the best thing you can do for everyone, and I include myself in this, is have a bunch of tools in your resilience toolkit that you can dip in and out of when you need them. And you might need different things at different times. So for example, if you're working towards a deadline and you're stretched, you are overwhelmed, potentially really tired, that might not be the time to think about, how do I get flow into my work, or how do I connect with others, even though it's really good for you. Connecting and checking in with other people, that could be something that would normally be a resource that would help you boost resilience, can end up feeling like something that's an extra commitment that you just can't take on. And I've been there, and it's not good for you. You should be checking in, and you'll get a lot from that. But if you're in a period of time where you can't do that, that's kind of okay. Maybe at that point in time, you need to prioritize walking outside, for example, being in nature, or because you can find 10 minutes to do that, or rest, like making sure you take a rest in the middle of the day at some point, or listening to your body. And I think so the things that I do will depend what's going on, and I kind of have to check in with how I'm feeling, or like physically sometimes how I'm feeling. I get a bit And and if I think about the gym, for example, just think about going to the gym, I think about being achy. Sometimes if I start to feel achy, I know that I'm probably a bit stressed or a bit overwhelmed. But even like you think about the gym, like it's the perfect, or exercise in general. That is one of your resilience boosting tools potentially, because exercise, we know this is all evidence based. This can help you to manage stress and anxiety. But equally, if you've if your day is back to back to back to back, you've got too many commitments, sometimes exercise is not going to be good for you, because it's another commitment that you can't get to, or it's another thing, and actually your energy levels are so low and you're so depleted that exerting energy on a run might not be the right thing for you. However, going for a walk might be, or um looking at other ways to boost your energy, which might be resting at that point in time. So it's really hard to answer that question about what I do, because it really will depend on what's going on. I'm just very, I guess the thing that I always do is actually focus on that self-awareness piece. So how am I feeling? What's going well? What do I need to change in the long run? Maybe I can't change it today, but what do I need to work towards changing? Like, what isn't working for me?
Well, I feel like that sort of internal reading is really important. And I love this point that Jeff brings up, because I think when you kind of look internally, if you have gone through something major, so again, maybe you lost one of your biggest clients, maybe you experienced a layoff, maybe your personal relationship is not in the best place, whether that is with your spouse, your child, your family members, that you are either coming out of a really big life event, whether that's a layoff, using that as an example, or maybe you anticipate that happening very soon. What is a kind of go-to best practice tool that you
Mhm.
find the majority? I know it's not one size fits all, but over the years you've worked with hundreds of thousands of individuals and employees and teams, but I guess what's a commonplace one that seems to fit for the majority of people?
Well, something that there's tons and tons of research on is gratitude, and the impact of gratitude
Gratitude.
on resilience and also reducing stress as well. And that's because sometimes when life feels overwhelming and we don't know where to go, or we don't know what to do next, or sometimes we're in a really tough place that it's it's difficult to navigate, kind of switching your mindset just for a moment. You don't have to do this all day every day, but just taking a moment each day to focus on some of the things that are going right in your life, or some of the things that actually you can be grateful for, can be appreciative for, can actually help you to boost resilience, because it reminds you that even in the darkest times, there might still be some light. There might still be something that is positive. And, these can be really small things. It could be, having a moment of, if you think, like, and I go back to how busy my December was, like even just having a nice coffee on my own for 10 minutes was actually, that's all I could do some days in terms of building my resilience, and just being appreciative of that, and like, actually, do you know what? This is nice. I'm okay for a moment. And even just appreciating things like, reading a bedtime story to the kids, or being able to pick them up from school, but then it can be big things as well. You can also think about things like having your health, for example, or having choices, or having a holiday coming up, or a break. It can be big things, but it can also be small things as well. And there's actually there's no kind of distinction in terms of research saying, oh, we have to, the big things help. Being appreciative of the big things builds your resilience more so. That's not the case. It makes no difference if they're tiny things that you're concentrating and focusing on, or they're big things as well. And I know it sounds really simple, and it probably sounds really obvious as well, because we talk about gratitude so much when it comes to well-being. But that's because there's so much evidence for it. And, if you think about, so resilience is the ability to grow and develop and recover following a period of adversity. So you have to come up against challenges to build resilience. Mindset's kind of your attitudes and beliefs about the world and how you see the world. So if you think about shifting your mindset, so shifting your focus towards something in life that is going well, rather than purely focusing on what isn't going well, you're actually over time shifting your mindset. You're changing your mindset because you're taking your attention, which is how you experience the world, because that's what you're thinking about, where your attention is, and how you view the world. That's your mindset, that's your attention. But you're taking that away from just negative towards, you're bringing a bit of the balance up. I'm not saying replace the negative with positive, because that can be toxic positivity. But what I am saying is, can you bring that balance up a little bit so you acknowledge the fact there might be some positive as well as the challenging stuff in life going on. And that's and it kind of goes back to what you were talking about with optimism, and shifting your mindset there.
Well, and I feel like, again, I will speak for myself. I know that I take things very personally. I hate that phrase, leave your work at the door, because I know that I don't do it. If something kind of bad happens at work, I'm carrying that through dinner. I'm thinking about it before I go to bed. I'm thinking about it in the morning. And so when people sort of give me this like trite advice of like, leave your work at the door,
Mm,
it has never resonated with me, because I'm like, I
mm,
can't, because I care
mm,
about it. And so one thing that I'm trying to work on, and actually I ended up watching your entire course about, is really sort of building this optimism. So knowing that, yes, something did go wrong at work, we messed up, or the client messed up, or UPS messed, something messed up. But how can I build that optimism so that the rest of my entire dinner, the next morning, breakfast, it doesn't sort of, I guess, spread like a cancer through the next like
mhm.
48 hours of my life? Because that's something that definitely resonates with me, because it happens to me quite often. I was curious, when you find people like me that just that sort of doom and gloom seems to hold with them a bit longer, what are pieces of advice or strategies that you recommend when, because I know it's happening. It's not that I'm unaware of it. I very much know that it's affecting me. I just don't know how to get the monkey off my back, so to speak.
Well, the first step is knowing. Like, we don't always know, because sometimes I look back at events in my life and I think, oh, I kind of just missed that was going on. I'm not always the most self-aware person. Like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh, I kind of got that a bit wrong, or um, I didn't really notice that I was reacting that way, or why I was reacting like that. So the first step is being aware of it, and that's a really good place to be. I know it's not always a pleasant place to be, but it's a good place to be. Um, and I guess there are two things you can do with that. And I'm a bit like that. Like, I take things, I guess it depends what it is. Some things I can leave and not take too personally. Some things I can't. Like, some things I just can't let go, and I just can't stop thinking about it. And I have got a bit better as I've got older. um, but I still find that hard. And I think that's because you care about work so much, and it's such a big part. Like, because it's probably a big part of your identity, and who you are and what you believe and your values. And that's why it's important. But there are probably two things you can do. So one is think about acceptance. So I often talk about this idea of accepting all emotions. So not just inviting the positive emotions to pop up in life, but actually to accept a whole range. And there's a couple of reasons. One, you're human, and that's going to happen anyway. So what is the point of fighting what's natural in life? Um, and two, the only way we can experience joy, for example, and understand what serious joy is by knowing what sadness is. If we can't, it's that contrast. Because if we had no sadness, joy wouldn't feel like joy. It would just feel like normal every day. So we need these different emotions to be able to experience life well, and in this rich way that we should be experiencing it. But also, emotions are like data points. They're there to tell us something. So imagine you are in a situation where um you're really upset about something that's happened, whether that could be a work scenario, something could happen at work, or it could be something in your personal life. That's telling you that something about that situation doesn't sit right with you, or maybe it's telling you maybe you're not in the right environment for you. Maybe there's some changes you could make. Um, Maybe there's certain people that are around you that are making you feel that way, and that's not pleasant. And maybe there are changes you can make about that. Or maybe it's telling you something about yourself. So you're upset because of something you've done that actually didn't go to plan, or it hurt someone else, or it didn't land in the right way. But that's telling you something. You can make a change based on that. And think about fear, for example. If we lived a life with no fear, then what happens if we're in danger? You wouldn't know you're in danger. So we need these emotions for so many reasons. And I think if we can look at them like it's telling me something, it's telling me it's important. And can I make changes? Maybe you can. Great. Think about what changes you can make. Can I not make changes? Did I just mess up? Maybe. But maybe you can learn something from that as well. And I talk about this idea of imagine that you're driving a bus and you've got all these kind of rowdy passengers in the back of the bus, and they're your emotions. So you're the bus driver and all your emotions are in the back of the bus. Every time you stop at a bus stop, there are new emotions getting on. You've got no idea who they are. You've got no idea how long they're hanging around for. You've got really like loud, noisy, distracting emotions. You've got some lovely little quiet ones sitting around in the bus, and they're all lovely. And you've got these really noisy ones at the back that just kind of keep screaming in the back of your head. And they're throwing things, and it's distracting. And think about some of your emotions might feel like that at times. You just can't let go of it, and it just keeps coming back in. But the point is, that's okay. They will get off the bus. And I think disassociating yourself sometimes with that, like you're not your emotions. They are something that you are experiencing. Okay, they're part of you, but you're not entirely defined by your emotions. And it really helps me sometimes when I'm feeling really overwhelmed or upset or frustrated to think about the fact that you can accept that. You don't have to always change it. You don't have to. I mean, I'm like the queen of optimism. I'm always trying to look to reframe things or come up with an opportunity in a challenging situation. But equally, it is okay just to be like, do you know what, this is a bit rubbish. And at some point, these emotions will pass. At some point, I'm going to stop at a bus stop and they're going to get off the bus. And that's okay. And you can enjoy, it's like you can experience sadness and love, or sadness and joy at the same time about different scenarios. That's okay, because they're just all sitting there in the back of the bus. So I think this acceptance piece can be really helpful. And I find it really helpful to sometimes just think, I don't have to always fight it. Sometimes you can just accept that maybe I messed up or maybe someone else messed up, and it will pass eventually. And you might want to work through that. You might not want to. You might just want to sit with it and be like, it'll pass tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. So that's one of the things I think is that acceptance piece is really useful. But I also think this idea of kind of challenging some of these thoughts as well can sometimes be useful. And it's up to you to figure out when one technique is going to work over another. And that's the tricky thing sometimes about mindset and psychology. But thinking about like, is this thought helpful? Is it helpful for me to keep thinking, I really messed up. I really messed up. I really messed up. Or someone else has really messed up. They've really okay, acknowledge it and do something with it. But is it helpful to keep going over that? And if it's not, if it is, then fine, keep doing that. If it's a survival thing, if you're standing in front of a bear, you probably need to keep thinking about the fact you're standing in front of a bear, because you probably need to do something about that. But sometimes it's not, and we keep going over it. And sometimes I just have to challenge myself and think, yeah, it feels rubbish, but I can't change it. And is it helpful for me to keep going? Probably not. And I'm trying to find ways to either accept it and think about the bus thing, or park it if I can.
I love this idea of, something you touched on, giving that bus example, was just knowing, yes, you're in a hard point right now, but knowing that you're going to get through it. And I think one of the things that I took away from your latest course was this idea of your future self, and really kind of framing your future self in your mind. What is, future you doing? What is future you feeling? What is future you experiencing? What is future you planning? Just kind of the framework around that. I encourage everybody to, we could try to go over the framework, but there's too much. So I would say watch the whole course, because then you understand the framework a little bit more. But it's, similar to what I just spouted off there. But I love this point from Matthew. When you are thinking about that future self, there are some points where it's like you can't even imagine how good it can get. And the example he talks about is having this sort of, poverty mindset, moving from poverty to middle class, or middle class to upper class. where you might not even know what's possible or
Mhm.
what to even, I don't want to say dream up when you think of your future self, but how have you worked with clients or employees or humans that are trying to envision their future self, but are having a hard time even envisioning what that future self could be?
Oh, there's so many layers to this. And it's something I have to deal with. Like I very much have had to address my working class mindset for sure. And it will always be part of me. There will always be part of me that has that mindset of I need to work harder, and I actually find it quite hard to pull back sometimes with work because I feel guilty if I'm not, constantly working because that's what I had to do to create my career. I had to, and kind of moving away from that is really challenging. But I think, don't necessarily feel the pressure of imagining yourself in 20 years. You don't have to. Just imagine yourself next year. Just imagine what you could do in a year. Imagine what you could do in 6 months. And it doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to be well, you can if you want. Like, don't let me limit you by any stretch of the imagination. But you don't have to be thinking about the mansion and the Bentley and, owning an island somewhere. And if you want to, yeah, go for it, like 100%. But you might be thinking, do you know what? I want a bit more time with my kids, or I want to take up a hobby, and I want to feel like, I don't know, I've got some kind of interest in my life that I don't have right now, or I want to learn something, or I just want to get ready to take that next step at work. I might even go for the promotion in the next year, but I want to get myself in a position where I can do it. I might, picking up some new skills or learning something or working on professional development or personal development. So if it feels hard, and different people go different ways here. Some people can really think far away, but then can't break that down into, what does that mean this month? Whereas other people find it really hard to think far away what their life could be, but can think like in the next month. So I guess firstly identify which one are you, because you probably need to work on the other end. So maybe helping yourself think about what the big vision could be if you're quite short term, or vice versa. But the other thing I'd say is learn about people who have made changes in their life. And I think this is probably what's helped me in life more than anything to break this mindset is the whole reason I became a psychologist was because I used to read loads of biographies and autobiographies as a kid. So all these stories of like everyday average people who become rock stars or scientists, or most of them were just normal. Not everyone I know, but most people had to start somewhere. And we always look at, it's a bit like we were saying at the start, we always look at people and think, oh my God, they've done so much. Like, I can never do that. Yeah, you could, mostly. Well, like, I can tell you now, if anyone wants to do what I've done, not that I've got an amazing life or career, because honestly, if you saw the behind the scenes, no one would be thinking that. But you could. It's just follow people who have done great things, or read stories about people who've done great things. Do you know, and this isn't a plug, but well, it is a plug, but it's not a purposeful plug. But the Mindset Matters podcast, my podcast is really good for that. Some of the stories on there, like Benita Norris, the youngest British woman to climb Everest when she did it, and like those kind of stories. And if you read her book, for example, you realize like she had no idea how to raise the funding to get to Everest. She had no idea. Like I think it was 2 years from her even learning that you could climb Everest to being on the top of that mountain. She'd never done that before. So I think reading stories like that, or following people that have those kind of stories, or have that kind of experience, can really help. But what I'll also say about that is it also doesn't hurt to have a bit of a poverty mindset, or a working class mindset, or as long as you're using it in the right way, because that's what makes me work hard. And yeah, that can go too far, and I've had to learn where to pull back and let go of some of the guilt if I'm not like busy. But equally, there are bits of that, and this comes back to optimism, there are bits of that I can use to my advantage.
Absolutely. I love this idea of really following other people's journeys and stories, and seeing what little things that you can glean from their life. And I one of the things that I do unapologetically is I am unapologetically nosy. Like I'm a nosy person. Like I want to know what people are doing. I want to know like what's in your Amazon cart. I want to like peek over your shoulder and see who you're texting. I want to like look in your inbox and see who you're emailing. So if I can ask a nosy question, I know that you obviously have your newsletter and now your podcast, but what are some newsletters and podcasts that you listen to that might be, whether it's other people's stories or whether it's just individuals that you really like and follow and learn from? I'm just curious, like who are those other people for you?
I feel like I might be like, I'm not sure I want to give all of this away, if I'm in all honesty, because there might be some judgment involved in some of the podcasts I listen to. I'm trying to think what might be relevant for other people.
You won't tell a soul.
Oh gosh, okay. So in terms of podcasts, I mean, it kind of depends what's going on in my life. So when I'm in my learning mode, which I normally am, I'm normally trying to learn more about people. It'll be things like, I don't know if this probably doesn't exist everywhere, but Desert Island Discs. God, I sound about 50 saying that. It's a really old Radio 2 program, like is it Radio 2 or Radio 4? I don't know. But basically it's been around forever in the UK on BBC Radio. And they turn it into a podcast, but they're about people. So it would be like, I don't know, an astronaut or a scientist or a artist, or I'm trying to think of someone who's like global that would have been on it. But there'll be like, I can't get my mind thinking today, but there'll be like singers and stuff like that on there. But they're just interesting stories. It's like half an hour, and basically the whole idea of it is they're going to a desert island, and you can take something like 5 songs with you or something, and then people talk you through the songs they would choose and why. So you learn a bit, and then it tells the story of like how they got to where they are. It's only half an hour; they're not long. And then they take a lottery item with them as well. And don't get me wrong, some of them, I just in the comments, the 80s reference to Desert Island Disc. I know. I can't believe I'm even saying this. But genuinely, it's a podcast that I go back to time and time again, because, who hasn't got half an hour in the car on a walk to listen to a story about a person who's done something? I mean, and some of them are weird references, and some of them are like really topical at the time, and it's a complete mixed bag. But that's the kind of thing I like listening to. But I actually spend quite a lot of time just listening to comedy podcasts, because I feel like my brain is frazzled and I can't. I get to the point where I'm like, I can't learn anymore. I can't learn anymore about people. I'm at my limit for a while. So then, but equally, that kind of comes back to what we're talking about in terms of resilience as well, like knowing when I want to learn and I'm being super curious about people, because that's kind of my work. It's my life, really. But sometimes I have to pull back on that, and I have to be like, no, I just need to laugh. I just need some people being silly or talking about their lives in a really funny way. So sometimes I do a bit of that as well, which I know. So yeah, I feel like if anyone actually came and looked at my Spotify, what I've been playing, they might be quite surprised.
I feel like at some point you also just have to entertain yourself. I use this system when it comes to reading books that I call carrots and candy. So I have to read one carrot book, which is like a smart book. So I was talking to Terry Rice last week, and he was saying that I actually still have it on my list. I have to read a book called 2x to 10x, or that might be reverse, 2x to 10x. Anyways, I wrote it down. But so for every smart book that I read like that, then I get to read like a fun beach read. Then I get to read, the book that is on the Reese Witherspoon book club or Oprah book club or whatever. So I have this sort of like a little bit of fun, a little bit of learning, because you're right. You can't just, if I read 3 sort of like carrot books in a row, I'm asleep. It's too much learning. I can't do it. But then likewise,
you can't put it all into practice. You can't. You've got to. And do you know what else I read? Because I really do this a lot. I mean, I've got I'd love to show you down here. I've got stacks and stacks of books all over my floor that needs to be read. And most of them are nonfiction. So I read a lot of nonfiction. But I kind of always have, it's my work, I kind of always have. And I realized about maybe a year or so ago, I never read any fiction anymore. And actually, you can still learn a lot about people and psychology and life and mindset and how you view the world which ultimately impacts our mindset, from fiction as well. Like I just feel like I was doing myself a disservice not delving into some of those stories as well. So I'm with you. I'm in a purely fiction mode at the moment.
I love that. I'm curious, for someone like you that has so much going on, from a work standpoint or career standpoint, obviously technology plays a big part in sort of helping you kind of have many hands in many different pots doing many different things. So I'm curious, in terms of your, tech stack, are you using Notion? Do you use Chat GPT to help you write the newsletter? Like what technology are you using that sort of helps you be in all of these different places at one time?
Oh, again, I feel like I'm not the leader on this front. I'm going to sound like I'm 50 again. I'm not 50. What do I use? So I haven't got into Notion yet. Shelby, who works with you, I know,
Yeah.
has recommended Notion, and I do need to get into it. And I did start watching a course on it, actually. So I do use Asana quite a lot, but I don't love it. So that's why I'm a bit like, and I know Notion's quite a good alternative for that, but I just haven't had the bandwidth to kind of delve into it properly. I quite like Asana for my to-do list every day, because you can kind of move blocks around and tick stuff off. And so that's kind of what I've been using it for lately, and trying to be a bit more realistic about what I can get through in a day. Because I mean, most days I don't get through everything on my list, and I split everything out like over weeks or months. And that's really quite rubbish at the end of the day, to always be like, oh, I just didn't. So I'm quite good at kind of moving things over and juggling things around. So I quite like that. Yes, I use Bing AI a little bit, particularly for things like, can you turn this newsletter title into title case, please? Because I still can't get my head around what title case is and what letters need to be capitals. You'd think I would know by now after publishing this newsletter for like almost 3 years. I still don't know. So that's quite handy for that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think what other technology I use. I don't know if this counts, but I use the Calm app quite a lot. And I sometimes use it for background noise, even if I'm not doing the meditations. And actually, I sometimes put it off my kids as well, if they're going to sleep and being a bit of a pain. So I put the kids' meditations on. Although if anyone from Calm app is listening to this, we need to think about how Calm interacts with Alexa. It's not working. So it causes me all kinds of issues in the evening, and I'm trying to get the kids to listen to it and wind down. But I'm like, no, you can't have an iPad to do this. That's a whole different. So this is where technology doesn't always work. Other technology things I use, I'd say that's probably about it for me. I still write a lot in my notebook. Like when I'm writing out a new course, I write a lot, and I've desperately tried to replace that. I've tried to do like the iPad with the little pen thing. It just doesn't work. I've tried to use
It's not
notes.
the same as having a pen and just, it's not the
Yeah,
same. You don't get the same satisfaction on an iPad.
yeah, and I just lose stuff. Like, at least when I'm writing it, obviously most of it I don't go back to, but lots of I do. Like if I'm writing a course, I have to keep going back to stuff. It's just easier to like kind of navigate. It's like I read books. I read proper books as well. I don't do Kindle or anything. So I'd say that's kind of it. I'm not really. Oh, I don't know if this counts, Riverside for the podcast. So everything's recorded
Riverside.
through Riverside, which is amazing for podcast recording. That's it. I've got literally no hacks, like no
I
tech
would
hacks.
I would echo this point that Susanna made of daily lists and then weekly. I also started doing something similar to this, because I used to just do these giant sort of like brain dump to-do lists, but then the brain dump, I'd look at my to-do list and I'd be like, wow, there's 23 things. And the 23 things would be of varying degrees. It would be everything from, pick up paper towels to like submit this speaking proposal. So it's kind of like all over the place. So now, similar to what Susanna's saying, I now have sort of like a personal life to-do list. That's where the paper towels would go, versus like a work to-do list. Even the work to-do list is then set up into like things that need to get done this week versus things that, not the end of the world if they don't happen this week. So I would second Susanna's point of when we're talking about to-do lists, really think about how you are using those to-do lists, because that's important.
I have to say, a big long list does not work for me anymore, and that's what I used to do as well. I wish I was going to say I'll show you my screen of my Asana, what it looks like, but I'll send a screenshot at some point. But it literally, like, it's quite satisfying ticking off, and because I can do it on my phone as well, because you can do it via Apple desktop. I don't know, there's something about it I quite like. And I quite like seeing this week long, and it's just got all these little things, but I can like scooch things along or scooch them back.
Ticking them off.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, as you know, around these parts, we love also ticking things off, and we love checking things off our to-do list. And one of those things are homework assignments, making sure that our homework is done. So if you could give all of us a homework assignment to do for over the weekend, or maybe at some point later this week, could be anything. It could be related to resilience. It could be related to, a more optimistic personality type or well-being. What would your homework assignment for us be?
Well, I'm kind of going to go a bit off piste with this. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many things I could give you. And I think that's the beauty of, like, especially that optimism course. And I've got a new resilience course as well, which is literally just strategies. It's like 10 things you could do day in, day out, or you put them in your toolkit and you get them out when you need them. But something I haven't talked a huge amount about, which ties in with optimism, resilience, and well-being, is this idea of awe, which always sounds really weird when I say it. It's AWE, as in awe, like wonder, that kind of thing. And there's all this emerging research around experiencing awe, which sounds like I'm saying this or that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying awe as in wonder. Can help you to boost resilience, well-being, and it can help to reduce stress. And the idea is that you are kind of shifting your perspective. So if you think about when we feel quite overwhelmed or we're facing a big challenge, it's really easy to put all of our attention there, and the world can become quite small. So you kind of block off everything else around you, and you're just super, super focused on this thing, which sometimes isn't that positive, especially if it's a challenge or it's adversity. And the idea of awe is it takes you out of that, and it makes you remember that, like, you're one person on a planet. You're one tiny person on this big planet, which is going to keep spinning. And sometimes what we think is a major problem actually isn't. Like, when we look back in 5 years' time or a year's time, we're like, actually, it wasn't as big a deal as it felt like at the time. Now, that's not diminishing the feelings, because I'll go back to that emotional stuff again about we need all these emotions. They're telling us something. But equally, sometimes a bit like gratitude can shift our focus, or can shift our focus too. So some ways that you can do this, for example, would be things like being around nature and thinking, oh my God, these trees are so old. Like, I do that fairly often when I'm walking the dog. I'm like, these trees are so old. Like, they've been here way before I have, and they're going to be here way longer. Like, they don't care whether this hub launches on time. They don't care whether all the functionality is there. Like, gives you a bit of perspective about life. But it could also be things like admiring, say, like, you're in a city, like looking up and admiring like the architecture, or like how massive the buildings are, and how was that made? Like, how did someone actually come up with that idea? And then how was it built? Like, how does that work? So it's this idea of things that are kind of bigger than us. And it could be things like a concert. So if you've ever been to a concert, you're like, oh my God, like that is just insane. Well, that experience. I saw Macbeth on the weekend. This is really random. And I'm not really a Shakespeare. I studied Macbeth, but I'm not really that into Shakespeare. But it was actually one of the people that had been on my podcast. She was in Macbeth, and so I kind of went along, and I was like, oh, this will be really interesting. Cush Jumbo. She was in The Good Wife and The Good Fight. I was like, oh, she's going to be Lady Macbeth. That'd be great. And I was a bit like, I'm kind of just going because I feel like, I should. And oh my goodness, the experience was unreal. So it was immersive. It's a teeny tiny theatre. It was her and David Tennant, who's like, I don't really know him, but he played Doctor Who in the UK. It's a big thing in the UK. They're both fantastic actors. And I had to put headphones on. And there was all this music in the background, like Scottish. It's also in Scotland, so this like Scottish music. And it was all been played live, people singing it live. And then there were like ghosts talking. That's part of the Shakespeare thing. You could hear it was all like spooky in the background. And oh my goodness, talk about awe. I sat there and I was like, please don't ever let this finish. I don't want it. Was amazing. I cried. My friend cried who I was with. We were literally like, this is insane. Like insane. But it's experiences like that which make you realize sometimes that there's more to life than what we're thinking about, or it takes us outside of our own heads for a while. Or just appreciating a whole nother art. Like, I'm not really into the theatre. I don't know much about the arts, but it really made me appreciate art, like that form of art, because it was a form of art. But you can do it with like nature, you can do it with art, you can do it with music, you can do it with architecture. But that's one of the things that I think everyone, if you can, take a moment at some point over this week or weekend to experience a kind of awe, like where you feel immersed in something and it feels joyful and it feels big and it feels wondrous and it feels bigger than you, just to kind of take your mind away from what's going on in your world for a while.
Ah, that is such a beautiful homework assignment. I'm really excited to do that one because that one it's going to fill my cup and all of our cups. I know it. So thank you so much, Gemma, for just, as always, imparting your wisdom and your positivity and your optimism on all of us. Where is the best place for people to keep learning from you and finding your content and just absorbing all of your goodness?
Oh God. Well, all of that stuff is like evolving all the time. So the best thing to do, I think, is just find me on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll keep posting stuff as and when it's created and put in the world and all of that jazz.
Ah, beautiful. All right. Well, we will throw the link in the show notes and in the comments so you can make sure to follow Gemma. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This was so much fun. We really appreciate you coming through.
Amazing.
Awesome.